go ahead and start a meeting at 6 o'clock. So I'd like to call the regular meeting of the HPC to order. It is for March 3rd, 2021, and it is, hopefully someone will get that phone, it's 6:01. Oh, someone got it. Okay. So the first item of business, let's introduce ourselves so everyone knows who they're speaking to, even though we're famous, I guess. Pamela.
Oh, okay. I'm Tamala Wright.
All right. I'm
Tammy.
Joy Porter.
Doug.
I was going in
Doug
order of the
Edmondson,
picture.
Doug Edmondson, Vice Chair.
And Ann Nichols.
And Nichols. Hi, everyone.
And I'm Michelle
Michelle.
Anthony, Senior Planner.
Hi,
Yes.
Michelle.
Hello.
Well, the first item of business is the approval of the minutes. I know I saw them in the packet. I don't know if all of you did. I didn't notice any situations, but I certainly sometimes miss things.
I saw it was great.
Okay. So
I
do we have a motion then to go ahead and approve the minute?
okay. I can motion to approve the minutes for what date was it?
February
That
3rd.
was February 3rd.
For February 3rd. I'm trying to pull up my sheets here. I'm sorry for the delay.
Second,
Yeah, my packet's not here. Where did it go? I love computers. Go ahead, somebody else.
I seconded it. I think we're ready to go.
I think we're
Yep,
go. Okay.
Yep.
All in favor, say aye and raise your hands.
Aye.
Lexi. The
Great,
motion
thank you.
passes. At this time, we're going to start into, first unfinished business. Michelle, do we have any unfinished business this time?
I don't believe so. No, we don't.
Okay. And then we have our new business. And before we start, just wanted to make sure that no one has had an ex parte or conflict of interest with either of these applicants' applications.
Nope.
No, hearing
Nope.
none. No, good. I'm going to go ahead and explain the procedure, I guess, because Jeremy's in the audience. What we do is we're going to hear from staff, and then we may ask staff, Michelle, any questions for clarification. Then we'll turn it over to the applicant, who can present any further information or anything that they want to about their application. And then we will ask them questions. We will open it to the public, listen to any public or read any letters that came in. And then we'll close it to the public, and then we as a commission will discuss and deliberate and make decisions and vote. And then if the applicant wants an appeal, then Michelle can tell how you go about appealing our decision. All right, so Michelle, this is the one with all the windows.
This is the windows.
Yes.
Windows.
And I'll have some updates I'll try to weave in to the presentation of the report. So this is for the property known as 601 Manitou Avenue. The request is for approval of replacement of windows throughout the existing buildings on the property. The property is in the Midland Subdistrict, which staff's provided overview information in the report. Also, this was part of the, I think it's actually 1991 historic inventory survey that we did, and the form on this property is attached to the staff report. Interestingly, it lists the other buildings, but it doesn't really go into detail. This is a good example of the more detailed survey forms that are done now when you have individual property surveys and inventories. And so it talks a little bit about the changes to the main building, or what I'm referring to as the main building, the big house that actually may be comprised of a couple of buildings that were joined, but it doesn't really give a whole lot on the other three structures other than their building dates and sizes. So the property does consist of that main building, which is noted as non-contributing, although it does retain siding. It does retain a lot of the window openings, although I think a lot of the actual original windows have already been replaced. There's earlier replacements that look to me like maybe they were from either the 40s or the 50s, maybe when the concrete masonry unit or concrete block addition on the front was done. That may have been when those changes were made. And then there's also some previous vinyl replacements that were done, frankly, without permits by previous owners. So it's non-contributing, but there are still some features that it retains from its original construction. And then there's a cottage on Deer Path, basically the first one up from the corner. That dates to 1920, and staff would consider that contributing. Second cottage on Deer Path at 1924, that's the cottage that has the original multi-pane windows, and I definitely would consider that contributing. And then there's the concrete masonry unit duplex constructed in 1963, that's non-contributing, and that's back on High Street. There was a little confusion. Staff was confused since the entire property, there are no addresses other than 601 Manitou Avenue. It was hard to be able to organize things such that it was clear, because I'm used to doing that, frankly, by address. So I didn't realize that the last two window units, I think it was 23 and 24, 22 and 23. Let me just look real quick. That are in the photos that are numbered by, numbered by window. 23 and 24. Those are actually in the duplex. And so in the report, although I don't believe that the well, I guess the site plan does show those. I was thinking that the duplex was farther back off of High Street, but it's kind of behind that second, somewhat larger cottage. So I was all off, but it's actually connected to the main building at the back, not really a separate one. So I had indicated that staff really wasn't reviewing the duplex, but then in the recommendation, I did make a recommendation on those two windows. And so we can certainly talk some more about that. That area that is being referred to as the duplex is behind, when viewed from Deer Path. You may be able to see it at an angle, but it's largely behind that second, slightly larger cottage. So I think that we could not necessarily deal with windows 23 and 24 because they're not really readily visible from the street. They're blocked to a large extent. And I just wanted to make sure that I updated you all and kind of tried to clarify that, because it was a misstatement in the staff report. And then staff has noted that the original stone wall that is on Manitou Avenue and then wraps up around Deer Path has been stuccoed. The stone's underneath there because I've seen cracks in there and looked, and the stone's underneath the stucco, but it's covered over. So that's kind of further moved this property away from its historic past. So staff, as I noted, staff didn't consider the duplex, and I'm recommending that we not address 23 and 24. And I've noted the issue with the addressing. If it's this confusing without addresses on those buildings, just for this report, if someone had a health emergency, it could be a real life safety issue. So I'm going to be talking to the owner about updating the addressing for this property so that it makes more sense. So the proposal is to replace most of the existing double hung units with vinyl double hung units. Those are the windows that the applicant indicates staff was willing to approve. As I've noted, many of those windows, the existing windows, appear to be earlier replacements from the 40s or the 50s. Also, a lot of the existing windows, especially not the plate glass ones that are existing, but the ones that are potentially operable. A lot of those are also covered by aluminum storm windows, which would not be approved now. They not only have gone out of fashion, but they're not very sensitive to historic buildings or in the historic district. And so this would this project would allow removal of those as well. And then replace other windows with sliders, picture windows, or multi-light windows. Actually, this is another item that the applicant wanted me to make more clear, is the multi-light windows. They're proposing, their original proposal does not have any multi-lights, any divided light grids in the proposed windows. That is their preference. If the commission won't approve that, then they will talk to you about potentially being able to put the grids between the glass or internal to the window unit. Staff has recommended that anything with divided light appearance should have the exterior grids as we normally do require. So I just wanted to confirm and to correct with you all that their actual application and their preference are no divided light grids in any of the windows. Except I do believe there are the ones on the cottage that has all the divided light windows. I think a portion of those have either between the glass or internal grids. And the applicant can go through that with the commission and probably clarify a little bit better. But if my memory serves, part of those replacement units were attempting to keep a multi-light appearance.
And those are on the small cottages then, the ones that are
Yes.
contributing is what.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Especially that one and that's a bedroom area where all those original multi-light windows are. And so right now they don't operate, and there is some concern about needing at least one egress window from there. So I'll address that a little bit more later in the report. There are two basic guidelines that apply to this request. One is from the Chapter 4 guidelines for preservation, alteration, and additions to contributing residential structures. So we've got a mixed bag here. We have some non-contributing. We have some non-contributing because of just age and later construction, and we have the main building because of incompatible changes or insensitive changes that had been made years ago. And then we have two cottage structures that, are more than likely, and definitely one of them is contributing. So the guideline 4.13 would apply to anything that is contributing. And then guideline 6.5 has to do with guidelines for additions and alterations to non-contributing structures. And that really falls under architectural details. A lot of this section has to do with new construction, and a lot of this section would have to do with non-contributing buildings, generally not ones that have been so much altered that would be contributing if they hadn't been altered, but that are built out of were built out of our era of significance and that kind of thing. But be that as it may, the guideline under that chapter falls under architectural details. Windows are architectural details. So guideline 4.13, staff was primarily concerned with the replacement of the historic 9-light windows, which is 19 through 22 in the 1924 Deer Path Cottage, which has units 2 and 3, and recommended if these windows were to be replaced, that the new units would need to closely match the existing units, including grids on the outside of the windows. Staff believes that the proposed windows have some divided lights, but the grids are not on the exterior, and not all the window areas are feature grids. I believe the description that they gave me was, if you looked and the windows were in thirds, the outside 2 window units, or what appeared to be the outside 2/3, had the grids. The inside was more like a picture window. And so staff has recommended to the applicant that slider units should have exterior grids, since this is more commonly the design of slider or smaller casement or fixed windows in the historic district. Usually when you get into smaller windows, accent windows, slider or casement windows, a lot of those feature multi-lights more often than what we see double hungs do. And so that's what staff was recommending and what staff was prepared to approve. Otherwise, some windows proposed for sliders should be considered for changing to double hungs. That is also something that staff had recommended. And I'll go through some of that. I've outlined in basically the staff recommendation. In regard to the architectural details, windows in non-contributing buildings are an architectural detail that can either restore character to a property that's been previously remodeled, or allow an existing building to be more compatible in the historic district. Staff's primary concern in regard to the main building on this property facing Manitou Avenue was the picture windows on the ground floor facade, which are proposed to be replaced with slider units. Staff recommended that those windows be replaced with double hung units. So staff believes, this is staff recommendation, staff believes the window changes proposed on the main structure are overall acceptable, with some exceptions that provide an opportunity to better coordinate previous insensitive changes with the historic character still existing on the property and in the surrounding area, and preserves original features. Staff recommends approval of MCAC 2102 for replacement of windows in the existing openings at 601 Manitou Avenue with the following conditions. So number 1, windows numbered 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, and 16 on the applicant's exhibit that are currently double hung units shall be replaced with double hung units. Number 2, windows numbered 1 and 2 on the applicant's exhibit are proposed as slider style, shall be replaced with double hung units. Those are those picture windows. 3, windows numbered 10, 14, 17, 18, and then we've got 23 and 24, which I've recommended that we not address. Proposed as slider units shall be replaced with double hung units, or with either slider or casement windows with exterior grids to be divided lights. 4, the window number 15 proposed for replacement with a fixed or picture unit that serves a storage area shall be replaced as proposed. That window is small and minimally visible, so will not impact the appearance of the property overall. It's a small window that's next to a doorway, and that area now is a storage area. And so staff felt that a fixed unit was acceptable there, with other changes as are being proposed. And number 5, windows numbered 19, 20, 21, and 22 shall be retained and restored such that at least one unit operates to provide needed emergency egress from the bedroom where these units are located, or if replaced, shall be with units that match to the greatest extent possible the appearance of the existing historic windows in regard to member dimensions and number and pattern of lights. I do not know whether appropriate replacement units are going to be available by the manufacturer that the applicant is currently working with, or even in vinyl. I don't know if they'll be able to get that. But I think these windows are an important feature of the property. They do retain the connection with the property's history, and particularly this building's history. If they can be repaired, even one of them, just to be able to open, to be able to provide the egress from that bedroom that staff completely supports, needs to happen, then I think that under the guidelines and under the previous actions that have been taken in the district, that I think that would be appropriate. If they can't be fixed such that they can get an operable unit out of one of them, then replacement, but it should be a replacement that's up to standard for maintaining the look of that building. And then staff does note in regard to condition 5 that the city does offer the mini maintenance grant that could assist with some of the costs of window rehab to allow one or all of those units to be operable and increase the energy efficiency of the historic units. Staff's not necessarily recommended that on all the other windows, because as I've said before, I believe that a lot of the existing double hungs and other windows are already, mid-century replacements due to their style. I think they probably were replacements where earlier windows were in a lot of the cases, but they themselves are not the historic windows from, I think 1909 was when the main building was built. So anyway, that is staff's report. I know that there's a lot here and it's a fairly short report, but if we need to go through the photographs or any other information, I'm happy to dive into that. Alternatively, you may want to bring the applicant over and let him go through it with you to make sure we all, that we're all understanding where everything is. And I'm happy to answer whatever questions that are needed.
Thank you, Michelle. I just had a question on the mini grant. Did we get that increased to $1,000?
We have not yet done that, but I think it's something that we could do by the time we processed an application, and then, be able to award whatever the resulting amount is.
Oh, okay, I just wanted to double check on that. So questions, comments from the board to Michelle? Any questions for clarification? And all these windows are vinyl?
All the proposed windows are vinyl.
Okay.
Thank you for all the pictures.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't see any of the, I didn't realize the cottage was included in this. When I read through the report, I didn't see that that those multi-light windows that face Deer Path were part of the replacement of this.
Yeah.
And that would be my real concern. I mean, those little cottages there, that little cottage has probably the most significant historic value of that complex of buildings. Obviously, I mean, without saying the concrete block building back in the 60s behind it has no contributing values, but the main house itself still has elements that are historic. But those cottages, particularly those multi-light windows, are definitely that would be the one that I would be the most concerned about. So if they can get those repaired and get one of those to slide, because at one time they did, one time they did slide, and repairing those guys and getting them functional would be a lot less than having them replicated. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah.
Well, Michelle, why don't we bring over the applicant so our applicant can introduce himself and his address and then address us.
All right, let me see if I can do this.
I can help out. Is it okay? You got him. Good job.
Our shadow.
Yeah. And Jeremiah, you'll need to at least unmute if you hover over the screen where all the panelists are shown. There you go.
Sweet.
And Jeremiah, if you could introduce yourself and provide your address.
My name is Jeremiah Rennie, 2528 East St. Vrain Street, Colorado Springs, Colorado, 80909.
Great.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Did you want to give us some more information? Or your application?
Well, yeah, just to clarify a couple things. That building in the back, it actually doesn't connect. I know it looks like it does on the map there. It is separated, but the roof's kind of overlined. So if they were doing like an aerial photo, they might have got confused right there. And then, yeah, all the windows proposed are with no grids. And then I was asking for consideration of being able to put grids on the interior first. If not, then grids on the inside between the panels. That way we can order them from the manufacturer we work with, which is Max. And if not, like you were saying, you're concerned with the ones on the exterior grid, I'll just have to go ahead and source for exterior grids if that's the decision. For the I was under the assumption that the whole place was non-contributing at first. I didn't know it was individual buildings. So I only read like through chapter 6, and that's where some of my wording of the overly ornate stuff came in, because none of the other windows have any of the grids in there, except for just those cottage ones. That's why I had worded it like that, because I seen a picture in chapter 6 about that. I don't know if you can see the window in the background. Can you see me or?
Yeah, no, your video. We don't have your video on.
Let me see. How do I start video?
And we do
There you
have,
go.
All right, that
Cameron.
one in the back there, that's like a 3 light that's proposed on the cottage right there. The sliders just don't have the picture in the center, but that's kind of a visual what it would look like there without any grids or anything.
thank you, Jeremiah. So, Jeremiah, are you have anything else that you wanted to bring up at this time?
No, just the only other minor thing I could think of is like window number 18. That's covered up by a screen any which way, so you would never see any of the grids or anything in there. And then I did provide some pictures from some of the surrounding buildings right across the street. They use sliders too with no grids or anything like that, but you can reference all that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So are you open to trying to repair the ones on the 1920 Deer Path?
To my knowledge, they're fixed and they don't open. But I mean, if we're just painting them, and which I mean, because that'd be about the extent of it, reglazing anything that was messed up. I mean, I can do that.
And then adding an egress window, I wonder where you are with that, because I know that's not an option. You have
Yeah,
to have a way to-
we'd have to
Yeah.
find something else. We'd probably have to order all new windows that met the exterior grid if we're going that route to fit in there. That way the egresses work for the bedrooms, because there is 2 units, so we need at least one on each side.
So does any of the commissioners have any questions for him or any comments about what he is?
Yeah, can you hear me, Jeremiah?
Yep.
So you're saying that you want to take out the multi-light windows that are facing Deer Path and replace them with the stationary picture in the center and 2 sliders on either side, no grid.
Yes, and if you would require a grid, I'm asking that first you would consider me putting grids on the inside. If that doesn't work, then grids between the panes, and I can reorder windows from the manufacturer like that. If not, then I'll have to figure out a solution that will work with exterior grids from another manufacturer.
Well,
Or I'll have to-
interior grids between the panes is a higher end window. And I mean, I would find that acceptable. I mean, I don't feel, I mean, I hate to be a hard line about this, but out of all the buildings there, those cottages facing Deer Path and those multi-light windows are probably some of the most historic windows that are in the buildings, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
and just removing them and putting them with just single glaze, you know, would definitely not be in concert with the spirit of the HPC and in the historic preservation, you know, codes and ordinances that are in place. But putting in, you know, a grid pattern that is, you know, congruent with what's pre-existing. I mean, I get it. I mean, I'm sure those are cold walls. And, you know, if you had, you know, grid on the interior of the panes and sliders on either side, it would offer some egress.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you'd get the full 5 square feet or not out of the thing, but, you know, it would be better than nothing. It's better than, you know, what we'd have. So, I mean, that's what that would be my recommendation. That's where I would stand on that.
Okay.
Okay.
Michelle, the fire department, I'm assuming that to get things approved, you have to have a certain size egress window.
Well, the egress window only comes, the requirement, there's nobody telling them that they have to do this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's certainly, we want people to be safe, and it's preferable to have the egress window, but there's nobody saying these have to be replaced because there's no egress window. And so, you know, there's no requirement at this point that, you know, that it be done. And if they improve the situation, I mean, regional is not going to require, as long as there's no structural change, you know, to the framing, it doesn't even require a regional window. So fire department really won't be reviewing it.
That's interesting, because I know when we did some things in our home, we couldn't.
Yeah, if you're doing overall renovation, then they can come in and
Then yes,
require those certain
yes.
things, but yeah, not
Not
something
just
is
with window
isolated.
replacement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Jeremiah, where are you with the double hung as opposed to the sliders? The staff is looking at replacing with double hung windows. Was there an objection to it from you for a reason?
Well, the main reason is I didn't realize that this was in the historic district.
Oh, okay.
And so we had already ordered the windows, so I'm looking out for the owner's interest in investment right now. Also, I believe that it kind of fits in as like right across the street on Deer Path. There's plenty of sliders there, and across the street, right next to the fire department there. I think it's 626 Manitou. I'm not sure exactly, but that motel there has lots of sliders in it, and changing it to double hungs or adding the grids into the sliders, I think would just kind of overdo just a couple little windows on one side of the house when the rest of it is the double hungs.
So if you had to order different windows, you could still do that?
Oh yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and from a staff standpoint, I think of all the not double hung windows, you know, current existing not double hung, that those facing Manitou Avenue, those 2 units that are currently plate glass, going to something that's more consistent with the rest of the building, even changing those and making them double hungs, I think would go a long way to making this building not stand out like the sore thumb that it kind of currently does. And then those divided light windows on the cottage, I think I think everything else, if the commission wanted to say it's fine, everything else is fine, but those 2 windows on the front facing Manitou Avenue, and then the divided light windows on the cottage with the 2 units in it, I think those are the windows that are the most sensitive.
So 1 and 2, and then the 19, 20, 21. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
From staff's take on it,
Right.
my recommendation would be do double hungs on the 1 and 2,
Right.
and either repair or make operable the ones, the 19 through 22,
Mhm.
or if they're gonna be replaced, they need to be replaced with something that replicates the current look.
Right. And I like Doug's suggestion, actually. I think the interior would probably, if you can use the same manufacturer, that may be a good compromise.
It may, yeah, I mean, it may be, we've generally not allowed the interior or between the glass because
Right.
they don't give the same look. Staff wouldn't recommend it, but again, I'm not the one making the decision. You guys
Right.
are.
Right.
Right.
So you're saying, Michelle, that the grid should be either between the panes or on the outside?
My
recommend-
recommendation is that they're on the outside.
Okay,
Yeah, I know that the house across the street that was in the picture that used to belong to John and Sarah. I don't know if they still own that or not, but somebody had come in and chopped that house back in the 50s. And Peakview Hotel was built that way. It was just built that way with those sliders. But yeah, I mean, I think that double hung, throughout the building, them wanting to replace everything with double hung and having a more consistent look throughout the building is more desirable than a mix and match of the windows they have. But yeah, I mean, if as an HPC commissioner being asked about windows, those windows in those cottages, that would be the one point where I would stand on, where those definitely have to be a multi-light replica of what's there. And if you want to say exterior grid, I mean, I would go with that also. I'm trying to save a little bit of hurt for these guys financially, but then on the other hand, I mean, that's what this is about.
yeah. I can see
Well,
that, Doug.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think if the commission is okay with allowing the sliders and some of the other things without grids, or changing the window at all, I think you are basically really cutting down on, the investment, the additional investment that would
Right.
need to be made.
Yeah, because those cottages, I can't imagine those cottages have ever seen much of an update or there being much of an R value to those walls. And I'm sure those window walls are cold. I mean, I get that. And it might be, if they look at a cost, some sort of cost comparison on it, they may be better off just putting, a baseboard radiant heater underneath those windows for less money than it costs just to have the windows replicated or replaced or even repaired, so
Right.
there's another alternative.
Okay. If there's no other questions, I'd like to open it. And Jeremiah, if you're done or finished, stay with us.
All right.
And we'd like to open it up to the public to see if there's any hands raised, any comments. I know we have one letter from a adjacent on the corner there. Do you see any hands raised, Michelle?
I'm not seeing, I have the attendees list up here and I'm not seeing any hands raised. So I would say,
Did you want to read the letter that came in? Or if we've all read it, we don't have to hear it again. It basically said, Michelle, that the person likes the artist.
no,
and
that's on
Oh,
the next, that's
yeah,
the next one.
Okay, that's the next one. I got confused with windows and sheds. Phew.
That's all right.
A lot of windows to study and look at when I went to visit.
Heck yeah.
I guess at this time, we're going to close it to the public, Jeremiah, and then we're going to be speaking and deliberating as a commission.
Okay. And then do I hear back from you after or tomorrow?
Just
Um,
stay, we're gonna take you over and make you an attendee again. And then
Okay.
just stay on and listen to the rest of the discussion, and then we can always talk tomorrow if we need to.
Okay.
I just have to figure out how to switch you back over. I don't know how.
I can do that, Michelle. It's no
Thank
problem.
you. Thank you.
I told you I'd be the creepy one lurking in the background. Hold on just a second.
Thank you, Jeremiah.
I don't.
Thank you.
I don't- Okay, there we go. He should be switching over.
Thank you, Christine. So any thoughts, ideas? I think Doug, you expressed some things that I agree with on the 1920s cottage and those lights.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, and I know that this is sometimes very unpopular. I mean, people just want to
I
rip
know.
windows out, but I mean, it disrupts the integrity of the building so much when you're dealing with a wall of those old antique multi-light windows like that. I mean, I know those cottages I've been in them over the years, so on and so forth. I would have some concerns about just tearing all those out and there being some structural issues on the support of that wall. But that besides, this is, I mean, I've become a commissioner for certain reasons, and some of these old windows and some of these old buildings are one of the main reasons why. And the consistency that will be executed through the rest of the buildings on these grounds by switching all these out to mainly double hung windows. I mean, I get that, and I think it's a really good idea. But those cottages, that's the one point that I'm on, and that's it. The rest of it's fine.
Right. So it sounds like really he wasn't in violent disagreement. I mean, I
No.
think the way the recommendation is written, as long as we take out in number 3, numbers 23 and 24, which we've agreed not to deal with,
Right.
I think the recommendation's right on. And he still has the option of, if he doesn't want to replace the cottages 19, 20, 21, and 22, he can retain what's there and paint them like he said. So I think it reads fine. And I would,
Well, and I think the double hung, I don't know the cost between a slider, Doug, and a double hung, but it just seems the double hung would give that impression that it's historical, especially with those the two cottages.
right. And I didn't hear him really oppose that. Did you?
No,
No.
I didn't hear.
Usually be all right.
Yeah,
Pretty low key and positive about
right.
due to the property.
Right. So from what I heard and what the discussion, so I'd leave number 1, as is, condition number 1.
Right.
Condition number 2, I would leave as is.
Right.
Number 3 says the proposed as slider units shall be replaced with double hung units. Now, these are the ones that we had talked about letting them go as sliders potentially. Or, at least letting them go without exterior grids. So that's something you all may want to look at. Window number 15, I didn't hear that anybody wanted to change that so much.
No.
And then the 5th condition is the one that addresses those cottage multi-light units. So I think my question is really only regarding number 3. Are you going to require that those become double hungs, or if they remain sliders, put grids in them, or even just allow them to just remain sliders? And I have noted that number 23 and 24, I've X'd those out. So it'd be 10, 14, 17, and 18.
Right.
So are they sliders now? 10, 14, 17, and 18?
I don't believe so. I think.
We'll look at them again.
Yeah, I have to look at them.
Hold on.
And now,
Oh goodness, I've lost my numbers. What numbers were they again?
10, which is on the 2nd page of the windows, the
Yeah.
pictures of the windows. That's on the side of that lower level area, the concrete masonry area on the front of the building.
Okay.
mhm,
It's on the side, and I can't tell from the picture. It looks like it may even be a fixed unit there.
it does, as does
Yeah.
14.
Give
And
me the
then-
other numbers too.
And
10,
then 10,
13.
14, 17, and 18. So 14's on that same,
Right,
and that is a fixed unit, so it doesn't operate right now.
right.
And then 17 is at the bottom of that
That's
same
a slider.
page.
Yep,
And that,
that's-
yeah, it's either a
a
slider
slider.
or vertical divided light. So it's and then
Says it's slider.
oh, does it? Okay. And then 18. You can't really tell what it is because of the
No.
screen.
No. So I,
Well, it says slider, so let's go with that.
well, that's what he intended to replace it with. Is what
Yes.
that
Oh,
title-
oh.
Yeah.
That's how I'm getting screwed up. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't see in number 3 that there would be a big objection to letting him either put double hung or sliders and take out the requirement of exterior grids. Because again, I think our focus is that one cottage, really.
Well, and maybe consistency in the other windows. Because 3 and 4 look like, what do they
But
look
10
like?
10 is still going to be visible from Deer Path and Manitou Avenue.
Yeah,
Any visibility, I'm a big proponent of doing the divided lights on that.
Well, you could certainly move that one because it's literally around the corner from number 1 and number 2.
Right. Right.
You could certainly move that one up to the second condition and say windows numbered 1, 2, and 10 on the applicant's exhibit.
Double hung.
Units. And that way you have that consistency wrapping around that corner on that
Yes,
level.
I like that.
Right. Right.
That makes sense. And then letting.
And then 14, 17, and 18 can be replaced with either double hung or the sliders, which they already have the sliders. So that's
Right.
I'm sure what they'll
Right,
do.
17's not going to be very visible.
No, not at all.
I don't think any of those are so highly visible.
Right.
No.
And then that would be really the only change you'd need to make to the conditions if everybody agrees that that's the way to go.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
I can see that. Michelle, on the divided lights window, that's the historical part. I just lost my thing.
Sure. Windows 19, 20,
Yeah,
21, and 22.
on the Deer Path cottages,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like we really should, I guess, be looking at trying to replicate or to repair or paint. I'd hate to have them taken out because that's what happened in the 40s and 50s.
Right.
Right.
And
if
that's
he-
the way that the condition number 5 is worded.
Right. If they take it out, it has to match the appearance. So I
Right.
think that's fine.
And I don't know how you match the appearance, but I assume someone could repair them somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, they may not have been sliders. They may have been casement style. Since they're all kind of on the same level,
Mhm.
they could look at potentially just replicating operable units that are on, next to the doors, the entrances to the units that are kind of, they're not the ones parallel to Deer Path, but they're perpendicular to Deer Path. We'd still want those to, replicate them, but it may be that they could do something, with just those two and just leave the other ones. I mean, there's ways that they could cut the cost and still retain the integrity of the building.
And they could apply for that grant too,
Yes.
which always helps to get 500 or whatever is decided, or 1,000.
Right.
To do that, because that benefits the community too.
Right. And that would make a difference. That would make a significant difference when you're doing a bulk order like this. That $500 can make a real big difference.
Yeah.
So
So you ready for a motion?
I think we're ready for a motion, and who wants to be the brave one?
So I'll
No,
go
I
ahead.
think Anne was ready to do
Yeah,
it.
I
I'm
was.
writing as fast as I can, but
So I'll
I've
recommend.
made goulash out of this.
I will
Okay.
recommend approval of MCAC 2102 for the replacement of the windows, et cetera, with condition 1, condition as is written. Condition 2 will add window 10, so 1 and 2 and 10
Mm-hmm.
shall be replaced with double hung. Condition 3 will delete 10 and allow them to be either double hung or slider and omit the requirement for external grids. Condition 4 reads as is, condition 5 as is.
And just a clarification on condition 3, we also removed number 23 and 24.
You're right.
Okay, I'm just double checking.
24. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So
I'll
it'll simply
second
read
Very
that.
good, Ann.
14, 17, and 18. Double hung or sliders with deleting the exterior grid requirement.
Great.
That's my
And
motion.
I'll second Olga Hooey whenever we're ready.
And do we have a second then?
I will second that motion.
Thank you, Doug. All in favor, say aye or raise their hands.
Aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. And Michelle, you'll let the applicant know what,
Absolutely.
and then
Thank you.
will you also let them know how to apply for that mini grant?
I will do that.
Windows.
Great.
Windows.
Lots.
Gotta love them.
I know. All right, our next one is MCAC 21, I can't read in the dark here. 2103, material change of appearance of a shed on 1003 Manitou Avenue. David Gonzalez is the applicant. Is he also the owner, Michelle?
No, the owner is Johnny Harris,
All right, Johnny Harris is the owner and David is the person asking.
tenant.
the
yeah.
tenant. Okay.
So the applicant is requesting approval of the installation of a shed at the front of the parking lot adjacent to the studio at 1003 Manitou Avenue. This property is in the commercial core subdistrict, and you have the location of the property on a map that follows the staff report. This also has was part of the 1991 historic survey and inventory, and staff's provided that form as well for this property. The applicant's studio was built later than the adjacent brick building that houses the Mountain Man shop. The historic inventory form shows a building date of 1934. The form notes the assessor's photo, which would have been on the historic property card, showed the parapet was outlined in brick, and there was a continuous awning over the length of the front facade. And those improvements were, although the parapet and the little stepped decoration at the top is still there, the brick and the awning have been were removed at some time previous. The form lists the building as contributing. So the proposal is to place an 8x10 or 80 square foot shed in the first parking space next to the applicant's studio. A shed roof angled from front to back so that from the front, the shed appears to be a flat roof. A single entry door centrally located on the street facing facade with a row of clerestory lights above the doorway is proposed. On the exterior materials would be a vertically grooved plywood panel and wood trim. Roof materials are specified as architectural style asphalt shingles. No color was proposed. And that should be a darker earth tone, but also it's not going to be highly visible because of the orientation and the direction of the angle of the roof. And although not reviewed by the city, the applicant is preparing to paint the exterior of the building and intends to paint the shed to match, to coordinate those better. So when the applicant first consulted with staff, the shed was located as proposed. However, staff indicated placement farther from Manitou Avenue next to the fence around the former car wash on the adjacent property would be preferable. And staff was prepared to approve the location administratively if it was back farther. However, questions arose regarding the area next to the fence and if it could be utilized, and if the applicant would end up having to give up his assigned parking space next to the sidewalk in order to place the shed farther back from in the parking lot. The applicant also preferred to have his storage closer to the door to his studio. You might want to note that the door on the side of the building connects with the Mountain Man shop, and that's not part of the applicant's studio, although, you know, looking from the outside, you would think it was his back door. It's not, and he doesn't have any storage area in the rather small studio space. Staff has contacted the property owner, Johnny Harris. I have not heard from Mr. Harris, so I don't have an update for you tonight. I wanted to ask him, as the property owner, about the status of this, what's being said, what's being characterized as a parking space back there in that back corner. I have my doubts that it's an actual parking space, but I wanted to talk to the property owner, and hopefully maybe still can do that at some point. So the guidelines from Chapter 7 for new construction in the commercial core, and Chapter 9 guidelines for secondary structures have to do with building guidelines overall. And then there's one guideline regarding secondary structures. So I'll just quickly go through those. In regard to building alignment, the guideline and those in Chapter 7 was intended to apply to more major infill construction, not sheds, which are generally encouraged to be sited in less visible locations. However, staff acknowledges the steps taken by the applicant to coordinate the appearance of the shed with the building, and notes that it does make it more acceptable when viewed in the downtown streetscape than typically a shed would be considered. In regard to building orientation, the structure faces Manitou Avenue, as is typical for buildings in the area. Mass and scale, the proposed shed is shorter than the adjacent building, which is 1 story and fairly small in size in comparison to most of the downtown. When viewed in the applicant's rendering, the scale of the shed allows it to be secondary to the adjacent building, even though it's sited right at the sidewalk edge. Building form, the design of the proposed shed coordinates it better with the primarily rectangular structures in the downtown rather than your more typical shed with a pitched roof or even a gambrel roof. Roof form, technically there's no such thing as an actual flat roof. There's always some pitch for drainage, and you don't see that roof because of parapets around the front and sides of typical downtown buildings. The design and orientation of the shed allows it to appear to have a flat roof from the front because it's a simpler, less expensive building than what is usually constructed in the downtown. There are no parapets on the sides, so the roof angle will be visible from those sides, mainly the one side. The other one's really close to the building, so you wouldn't really see that. Storefronts, there's no storefront proposed, and that's appropriate for a storage structure. The proposed design doesn't provide a recessed entrance, as would be typical of a commercial building in the downtown, but does provide visual interest by the location of the door and windows on the front facade. Staff notes the adjacent building in which the applicant operates his art studio has only a slight recess to the entrance, and staff would not recommend the installation of additional windows or window boxes or facade on any facade visible to the street. Basically, I think keeping it plain and clean is probably preferable to trying to decorate it up. Architectural details, it would not be appropriate to try to make a shed appear to be more substantial building or replicate significant areas of detailing. By keeping the building simple, it stays secondary to other buildings in the area and is made compatible by some simple design choices that allow it to look consistent but not notable. In regard to materials, since the associated building is simple stucco, staff does not feel a shed should be clad in a more significant material. The grooved plywood has a fairly flat surface, and when painted to match, the building will coordinate nicely. Non-conforming commercial buildings. A shed in the downtown is a non-conforming commercial building, so this guideline would apply. Staff appreciates the applicant's efforts and willingness to seek out a design that's more compatible with the downtown than a typical gable roofed or other more residentially compatible roof line and building shape. In regard to secondary structures, this guideline was staff's primary consideration when initially working with the applicant, and although the proposal is far better than it would have been, staff still believes if there is an option to place the shed farther away from Manitou Avenue, that would be preferable. However, staff is not so concerned that I would recommend denial. If the shed must be sited as proposed, the applicants made the best choices that could be made for compatibility, while still providing that the shed remains a secondary focus in the streetscape. Staff did receive one comment from a member of the public. As I've noted in the staff report, he was generally supportive of Mr. Gonzalez and the application. He did recommend that the shed not be visible from the public street or sidewalk. So, of course, at the current proposal, that wouldn't be possible. And he also recommended that if the applicant relocated, the shed would be removed. And I had already actually incorporated a condition very similar to that in my recommendation. So in regard to the recommendation, staff believes the proposal is not optimal, but it's acceptable and consistent with the purpose of the historic preservation regulations by encouraging private ownership and use of properties within the district. Staff recommends approval of MCAC 2103 for the installation of a new storage shed as shown in the information provided for this application adjacent to 1003 Manitou Avenue with the following conditions. 1, if the owner approves the placement of the shed farther away from Manitou Avenue adjacent to the existing fence, the shed would be sited in that location. Number 2, if the owner does not approve changing the placement, or if the alternative location would result in the applicant losing his assigned parking space, the proposed siting of the shed at the sidewalk is acceptable. 3, this approval is specific to the size and design as shown on the application information. 4, the shed will be painted to match the building at 1003 Manitou Avenue. 5, no signage for the applicants or any other business shall be placed on the shed. 6, the shed is for storage use only and will not be rented or become a site of commercial activity, either by the applicant or separate from the applicant's use. I don't want to see, as can happen and has happened on some other properties where something that was really meant to be a storage space ends up being rented to someone to operate an actual commercial use out of, and that's not appropriate. And then 7, whenever Mr. Gonzalez ceases to operate his business on the property, the shed will be removed unless otherwise subsequently approved for use by the next tenant occupying the same commercial space. That allows you all to basically confirm with that tenant that it's for storage use only and, you know, kind of continue on. Otherwise, Mr. Gonzalez just needs to take it with him. And that is staff's recommendation.
So questions, I have a quick question. To place it's acceptable to place the shed right on the sidewalk where people are walking and right to the
Right
edge?
next to it's right next to the sidewalk is what's being proposed.
And do we know if the parking space behind is a parking space? And
No, I've not heard back from or been able to contact the owner.
so we don't have all that information then?
No, that's why I worded the conditions to say, once I do make contact with him, that if he says, no, that's fine, he can put it back there and he's not going to lose his parking space and, you know, we're fine with it, then he can put it back there. If that doesn't happen, if the owner says, no, I don't want it back there, or, you know, Mr. Gonzalez will just have to give up his parking, then at the sidewalk would be appropriate. And I think he's done a lot to make it more acceptable than just the regular shed.
My concern is that I really want more clarification, because if the shed was placed behind where a shed should usually go, it wouldn't really affect the historical nature of the streetscape with the Mountain Man
Right.
and that other building. And the Mountain Man owner is saying he doesn't mind it, but he doesn't want it out to the sidewalk.
Well, it's not the Mountain Man owner, the owner that the property owner owns property up on Ruxton.
Oh, okay. So any other questions for Michelle before, is the applicant here?
Yes.
Oh, good. Is it Mr. Gonzalez or the owner?
Yes, Mr. Gonzalez.
Okay.
Do you want me to go ahead and bring him over?
Well, unless anyone has more clarification questions for Michelle.
No,
The only thing I would recommend, Michelle, is, oops, am I on here? Yeah, the only thing
Yeah,
I would
you're good. You're good.
recommend is that definitively that it not be allowed to be wired. That would be, if there was any sort of improvements made to this storage shed, that usually when you put in a condition about it not being used as an ancillary business, as a secondary business, someone putting in, a soda stand or, a frosted stand or something of that nature,
Right.
is usually because they've allowed it to be electrified, that somebody's introduced energy into the building. So I would definitely, also as part of that condition, make sure that it is not to be either wired, plumbed, anything,
Right.
any sort of mechanical additions ever made to the building.
But he'd
Okay.
want a light, wouldn't he?
Well,
I
there's
would
ways
want
to
to know.
provide, there's ways to
You know,
provide
the-
a light without electricity, frankly, but
The deal is that, that introduces a level of commercial code, and, you can't just run an extension cord out there, and
right.
Oh,
it's
they'll
an
try.
invitation to disaster. I'm sure they have, but
Well, Matt, I think
don't
maybe
use a
that,
solar panel. There you go.
yeah, Mr.
Yeah, yeah,
Gonzalez,
yeah.
there you go. Mr.
Yeah.
Gonzalez has not mentioned that he wants power, and so he could certainly address that, and he is coming on board. David, you'll need to unmute yourself.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I can, and you'll just need to introduce yourself and give your address.
Okay. Hi, my name is David Gonzalez. My address is 1003 Manitou Avenue.
Thank
So
you.
David, had you thought about, you haven't mentioned to me that you were going to need power in the shed or anything.
The only thing I thought about going back to what you talked about is putting a central light at night. But there's so much light that shines from the light outside at night from the lamps. There might not be any need for that, and it being facing out, there might not be any need for light.
Okay.
But if I could always do a sensor light, just for extra additional light in case it's needed.
I don't even really know that I don't know that I understand what a sensor light actually is.
Well, so like it's a battery operated. I got one at my house, and it's battery operated. So it's like a motion sensor light. Like if you walk by, it turns on.
Mm.
Yeah, so we wouldn't want anything on the exterior that would light up. But you could put that inside, is what you're saying?
Oh no, on the outside. It's a sensor light. It's battery operated, so there's no electricity that needs to go to it. It's actually, it takes a couple of batteries to operate, and I have one on the outside of our shed at my house.
So it would be a light that was fairly bright, and if someone walked by in the early evening in Manitou, it would flash like it does for wildlife.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we wouldn't want to
Would
see
not-
that on the outside in the front. But if you were concerned, like for people that would get behind the shed or something, that you wanted to have it for security, that would be fine. But
Okay.
something that would shine out onto Manitou Avenue and could be coming on and off, I don't think that the city would allow that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm okay with that. So I mean, that's whatever you guys think is the best thing. I mean, if you think that it would be better behind it, then that's what I'll do.
And David, did you have anything you wanted to present to us, or can we ask you questions?
If you would like to ask some questions, I'm happy to answer them to the best of my ability.
Okay, that's great. I have a question about placing the shed farther back from Manitou Avenue. Have you talked to the owner about whether you would lose a designated does he designate the parking to you? Or is it something that you just have with your lease, or what? How does that look?
So I only have one parking spot. I did talk with both the owner and also Carlos, who owns all the rest of the parking spaces. And the only challenge with placing the shed in the corner, where I would basically switch parking spots, is that I would be blocked in or locked in. Like if I pulled my car in before business hours, they have parking. It's kind of hard to explain, but basically I would be blocked in. Like if a car were parked there, I wouldn't be able to pull out or pull in case there was another car parked there, because it would be too tightly squeezed in. It's kind of hard to explain. So if the parking, the spot that I would have, that is another option, would be the it's if I were to pull in, the front end of my car would be facing east. They have another set of parking that is actually facing south. So if I were to put the shed there and then also have the parking there, another car can pull in and just block me from pulling out or pulling in. And I can also do like a little rendering of it to show you. See if I can just grab a piece of paper.
People that can draw. I'm so jealous.
Me too.
Well,
I'd be like, okay, you can see a stick figure here.
it's like a bird's eye view of the space.
So it's more of a issue of being blocked in and parking, and then if you put it out by the sidewalk, then it's just going to be by the sidewalk, a shed.
Yeah, because that's where his parking space is right now. And when we went out and did a site visit, he basically what he would do is he would put the shed closer to the building, and he would still be able to pull in behind it. And he would extend, along that sidewalk a little bit, but everybody else in the other parking spaces would be able to get in and out, and he would be able to get in and out.
That if it's parked back, or you're saying that happens when it's parked right near the sidewalk?
Yeah, so
Well,
this is
go
my
ahead.
studio right here, and this is my parking spot. This is where I'm proposing to place the shed at, is right in here. The other where we were talking about earlier is right here. If we were to place it right here, and I were to park in here, and say another car comes into this parking spot, I would be blocked in.
Mhm.
And so I asked Carlos this, because he has employees that need the parking spot. He said, well, he would have the same problem with an employee parking there. They would be blocked in also. So that's why I'm proposing to have it installed next to my studio, and I can still pull in right here with no problem, without any cars being blocked. Does the drawing make any?
Yeah.
any
Makes
Mhm. That helps. Thank you.
Thank you.
David, what did your landlord say, Mr. Harris? Have you approached him, or was this like, oh, look what I got approved, and what do you think?
Oh, yeah, I've spoken with him several times, and he's open to the idea, and he had a sign for it, so
Okay.
so he's okay with it.
Okay.
I guess I have some concerns, and I know you've done a lot of work and thinking on this, but I do have in a historic district downtown in the core of our historical area to have a shed, even though it's going to match and look nice, that visible and close to the streetscape. I can sort of picture it, and I'm not sure that that's in keeping with our historical thing. I understand about parking very, very well. And it doesn't sound like Carlos or Mr. Carlos or Carlos is open to doing any changes because of his employee needs. I just have some concerns about that. I mean, to lose a parking space is not good because we know how parking is, but then to put a shed right up, it's going to look like a shed painted there next to historic buildings. I'm not sure on it. Doug,
Well,
do you,
staff had some of the same concerns initially, especially, and you know, and if there was a way to, you know, frankly, the owner, if the owner says this is where it's going to go, and you're going to still be able to park over here because he owns the property, he could do that. But I've not had the communication with him.
But hopefully you will, right, Michelle?
My intention, yeah, is to track him down one way or the other and
Right.
have the discussion with him.
Right. And I think that's appropriate. And the condition is written such that we allow you that latitude.
Right.
Yeah. I
Right.
mean, I hear what Joy's saying, but the rendering makes it look, I think, acceptable.
And any
Yeah.
kind of security system, you're not going to need any electricity for that, or which I highly suggest a security system. We had a whole line of sheds here on Plainview. I like 4 of them that got hit and just decimated. I know, Doug, you guys got a little much.
I got hit. They hit my car.
You know,
Yeah, they hit my car, my
So a
wife's car.
shed says, "Come steal me," you know. So I don't know what kind of security system you would need on it if you need electricity for that.
well,
You
it's
probably
I'm
do
on-
for,
I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence with it because, as far as I'm concerned, at this point, not having the property owner involved is you know, I mean, I respect David and he's a good guy and you know, hardworking man, and I'm glad to see that his success has brought him to this point. But you know, the property owner needs to be involved at some level. You know, this isn't the first that cat that's gotten out of the bag. Literally, when it wasn't Happy Cats, but it was the other cat rescue place where Manitou Pastries is now, just erected a shed without asking anybody, and voila, here we have this shed precariously perched up on the side of the hill, still yet to this day. You know, and so, but yeah, right there on the avenue in the downtown area, you know, the celebratory windows, making up the front to make it appear more like the building next to it is more acceptable if this were to be passed. I would also think that this would definitely be a question for planning, and what their scope is. So, go ahead.
I just know with planning that a shed of a certain size doesn't require planning to approve it.
Right.
yeah, this doesn't even require a regional permit because it's
No,
under
it's-
120 square feet.
Yeah.
And no foundation.
Right.
But I guess my concern is with Doug is that whether we postpone this until we get the owner involved, I just not feeling comfortable, Michelle, not because I don't trust everything you
Oh,
do.
no, that's, yeah.
But I'm concerned about saying it could be either or, and then we find out it could have been the or, and now it is the and. I mean, it's hard for me to vote for something that I don't have all of the information. And again, David's done a good job, and is, we want to support him. Yet at the same time, we have a obligation to the historic district downtown.
Right. And maybe, Joy, we ought to finish with David and then start our discussion, because we're really getting into that at this.
Okay, I'm sorry, David. We have to thank you for your input, and we're going to go ahead and close the public meeting too, and go ahead and have our deliberation. So, David, you're welcome to. You'll be moved off, but you're welcome to listen.
Okay, if I may say something, is that okay?
Oh yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Whatever your recommendations are to make the shed look as nice as possible, and I'm willing, to follow along with your guidelines. Obviously, it would be a lot easier to have it close by, since I would be using the shed on a regular basis, and be a lot easier to access than having to walk around and up to get to have access to it. That would be wonderful. But if, I will get a hold of Johnny. Does Johnny need to contact you, Michelle, directly?
Yes, please.
Okay. And if I would have known that, I would have reached out to him sooner, because the times that I've talked to him, he's like, he's on board for, you know, so I'll have him reach out to you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
David.
Thank you all, Doug and
Thanks, David.
Nova, Joy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to change
Thank
it back to
you.
an attendee. Thank you.
Okay.
Getting good at this, Michelle.
Oh, yeah. That's scary.
Yeah.
So if the majority of you all, the majority of the commission feel like we need to, you know, talk to the owner before you can actually take action, then the only thing I can suggest at this point is to postpone it until next month and give me time to, you know, contact the owner, or he contact me and ask him the question about, you know, moving the shed back to the nearer to the fence, you know, what effect that would have on David's parking, and just kind of get the full picture from the owner, and be able to present that. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, I'm frankly comfortable giving you that latitude at this point, but it doesn't sound like maybe Joy or Doug are. And I guess we need to hear from them.
I guess I'm torn both ways, because I understand about having a shed and wanting storage, but I'm also feel like I need more information to see why it couldn't be back, or could he be designated a different parking place, or what could happen? Is it really a parking place behind? Is there some way to compromise this? It's not that I don't want to give you the power, Michelle, because you're a powerful person.
No.
But I'm just uncomfortable voting for something, and then you end up, or we end up with like what happened with the shed with the cat place.
Sure. I understand that.
I remember that.
And it's
Yep.
so visible. I mean, it's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mind going a little slower on this,
Yeah.
but
Do we know if there's a time crunch for David?
I think to put a shed in, we don't know that, but to put a shed in is pretty, not even, I mean, you have a nice day, it goes in, I'm
Yeah.
assuming it
Yeah.
just has
He's
wood.
still pretty early in the season, frankly. You know, your
Yeah.
next meeting is at the first part of April.
Right.
So you know, it's still early in the year.
Right.
I-
So you had originally said, Michelle, you were going to administratively approve it if it was back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sheds can
So my guess is, I mean, what happens if the decision is to put it back? Are you just going to go administratively approve it?
Not now that it's been before you all.
Okay.
I think it's more appropriate to bring it back to the commission.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
once
if it's not a time issue for David, I would have no problem with tabling it for a month.
We're postponing it.
it'd actually be table.
It would be tabled because we.
Yeah, I incorrectly used the postponed term
Right.
out of habit, but yeah, once you've started a hearing, it
Right.
really is tabling it.
Right.
So I appreciate, I mean, for me, if I were a property owner and I were in Johnny's position, I would say, you do the legwork and you do everything else. You pay for all the fees and like that, and I'll sign off on it. But we don't have that. We don't have a letter. We have, I mean, of course, David, I don't question his integrity, but we need, I mean, first and foremost, I think we need to sign off from the property owner. I mean, we need some
Well,
sort
we
of
did
flag
get,
from
actually,
him.
the property owner has to sign the application, and
Okay.
Mr. Harris did do that.
Did
So
he?
we know that he's approved David submitting the application. What I
Okay.
don't have is the ability at this point to know whether he, is just going to tell Carlos, this is the way it's going to be. The shed's going to go here. David's parking here.
Right.
I want to be able to also talk to Mr. Harris, because the area that that farther back that the shed could potentially go, I don't believe that it's a valid parking space because of the issue with blocking in. There's no way you could get in or out of that space with with another car in the
Yeah.
other parking spaces. So
And I
Um,
believe there's an old electric sign right in that vicinity also, an old pole and concrete based sign. Is there not? I'm
that's
reaching,
right up close to
yeah,
the
it's
sidewalk.
right there. It's
Yeah.
right there. So, you know, and I appreciate Joy's position too. I mean, to put basically a, you know, a dressed up tough shed right on the avenue, you know, within, you know, 50 feet of our roundabout, you know, that's asking a lot. But I think in the spirit of that, how, you know, the windows and the door, how it's set up like an old storefront, at least, you know, at least there's an effort for it to look somewhat like, you know, an old storefront. So,
Right.
I mean, if it's painted and it's dressed up and it looks real nice, I mean, you know, what can we do here? We don't want to punish him, but you know, I mean, I get it. I just have concerns. I mean, I know how business like this. Next thing you know, there's power run out to it, you know, and there's I mean, but I'm not gonna. That's not our place to say. It's just, you know, how it looks and how it presents itself.
Right.
So therefore, and if it gets broken into, it gets broken into. Hey, you know, that's not on us, right?
No, it's not in our purview.
Yeah, it's so lit up downtown, so I'm not sure that. You know,
Right there on Manitou Avenue, that would be pretty
it's not a lot of dark skies.
grave.
They'll do it. I'm telling you.
Are we
They'll
ready
be happy
for a
to have
motion?
light to do it by.
So guys, are we ready for a motion?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I would move that we table MCAC 2103 and give Michelle direction to coordinate with the owner, Johnny Harris, and try to determine what the best solution is to provide David a shed that's in an appropriate location.
I second it.
And Tamala seconds it. All in favor, say aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. So Michelle will give it to you,
Yes,
and you'll let David know that we did postpone it to the beginning of April.
I will. And I'll also talk to him tomorrow about getting a hold of Mr. Harris. It could be that the contact information I have just is outdated and he may have not gotten the message I had sent him before.
Well,
So-
it would be interesting also to see if it's really a parking space and whether David can still maintain his parking place, but have to walk back to the shed.
Right.
There's not a door on that side anyway. I just would want to see. I think Doug was right when saying it's 50 feet of the roundabout is something we need to look at.
Sure.
Well, this is good. So, let's see. Any other business? Did you want to give an update on the survey, Michelle?
Yes, and I'm sorry it wasn't on the agenda, but it is just I did send out a quick little update that FHU, the consultants on the project, sent to me today. So they are currently finalizing the draft and will be submitting it to History Colorado as soon as tomorrow, but definitely by the end of the week. And they need to adjust a little bit on the schedule that we started with, just to give History Colorado ample time for turnaround and comments and that kind of thing. So the plan at this point is at the May HPC meeting, that's when they would bring the final draft after approval of by History Colorado to the commission to make a recommendation for adoption to the city council. And then we'll follow up with taking it to a city council meeting. And so that's the plan. Now, if you end up with a lot of items on that May meeting, then we may talk to the commission about either holding a special meeting for final presentation, or kind of worst case scenario would be to move it off to June. But hopefully we'll be able to do that at the May meeting.
Okay. Well, that's exciting.
Yeah,
That's
very exciting.
Go to Colorado history.
I think it's a great project, so I'm
Well, thank you.
excited about it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any council action?
I don't have anything else to report.
No, nothing else to report. So does anyone have anything to say before we say goodbye until April? or March, yeah, April.
April.
Oh.
Bye.
Adjourn our meeting.
Bye, everyone.
Christine. Bye, everyone. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Bye.
Bye-bye.